Everybody, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. And also, again, I think Simon just mentioned shout out to David MacArthur. David MacArthur is one of our MVPs and prominent speaker. He's the one who came up with this idea for code doing a conference just focused on code quality. So, if you know a little bit about David MacArthur, he has a weekly show on Sharp TV. Um, and he's always fascinated with the code quality and he loves it, and that's his idea. This year he was a little bit, I guess, busy. Hopefully, as Simon said, we will see him next year. So all right, let's get back to the keynote. Everybody, welcome. My name is Mahesh Chan, founder of CSharpCorner, and my keynote today is all about AI and Copilot, how we can benefit from AI in improving our code quality. But before that, I've been watching this conference for the last 5 6 hours, and I must say, amazing speakers. I saw Sagar covered code quality in DevOps, and then Wahid came and Satya talked about Copilot, refactoring your code. Amazing, amazing. And then Abhishek talked about how we should look at the matrices when looking for Copilot, and then we saw some good numbers on technical debt and details on other topics from Paco and Adam. And David just talked about writing clean code. So clean code has always been my one of the first thing is like, listen, if you're writing code, it has to be clean. So that said, thank you everybody, all the speakers before me and after me. This is going great. You guys are amazing. Let's get back to this GitHub Copilot. I'm sure most of you have already heard of GitHub Copilot. If you have not, I highly recommend you check it out. GitHub Copilot is your AI assistant. It is your code reviewer. It is your peer code reviewer. It could also help you answer your questions. So many of you, when you go to Google and search for some quick questions, answers, code sample, you don't need to do anymore. You're already there. You can do everything in GitHub Copilot. It is available through most of the popular IDEs, especially from Microsoft. Microsoft Visual Studio has it, VS Code, JetBrains, and other IDEs. So Visual Studio, the latest version, already has Copilot integrated in it. But some other IDs you may have to download a plugin or something extra for that. It supports major programming languages, right? C, C++, C Sharp, Java, Python. Any majority of them are already supported. It also actually supports the JavaScript and JavaScript framework. So you can ask Copilot to write something in React or Angular. It will write that for you. And the results say that Copilot is increase the productivity of developers big time. So I highly recommend you check out Copilot. Oops, what's going on here? Okay, so let's talk about code quality. In today's session, I'm just going to focus on code quality and how you can use GitHub Copilot for improving code quality. So when you think of code quality, look for these 5 things. Readable. Is your code readable? Can somebody just join your team? They can, look at the code and they find it very easy to understand. That's easy, the first one. Reusable. Can you writing the code that can be reused, including like classes, libraries, whatever functions? So can they be reused, right? You don't have to duplicate the code. Is it concise? You don't want to, especially if there's latest versions of the language coming, especially, I work with C Sharp. And if you look at the code written in C Sharp 3 versus 12, it's a big difference. Are you using maintainable? Are you building a maintainable code? Is the code maintainable, right? Clear, transparency, and then resilient, right? You have error handling, logging, notifications. What happens if something crashes in my code? So these are the 5 major things, we need, when you think of code quality, think of these features in your code. These are some numbers from GitHub Copilot, and I care about the first number only, that 85% of developers are actually happy and felt that they have a better code when they use Copilot when it comes to code quality. So definitely check it out. And you probably know what GitHub Copilot does is, as everybody said multiple times in this conference, is that GitHub Copilot is just using AI, and it is using GitHub code repositories, using also online websites. It also uses Microsoft has a lot of code as well through its own documentation. So it's using all that and try to give you the best code possible. However, it doesn't mean that all code written by GitHub Copilot or any chat GPT or any of these generative AI tools is correct. It's also, you can't be sure that it's the latest version. You can also be sure that it has best quality. So that's your job to verify that, and something we can try to do this using the tool. So I'm going to cover these 7 things. How are you going to use Copilot to explain your existing code? Right. Let's say I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if I can do share my screen. I'm going to show you live how to do these. Share screen. Let me try that. Okay. I'm going to share my window. You know what? I'm going to share my entire screen, right?
Perfect.
Okay. Sam,
I see your screen. You're inside StreamYard. Once you move away, I'll add it to the stream.
Okay. Tell me when you see my screen.
Yeah, I see a Visual Studio. I've added it to the stream.
Great. So this is some of my existing code, and funny thing is I wrote this whole code using Copilot. I didn't write a single line of code. But this is not where I'm going to show you today. Imagine you already have the code, or you're writing already code. So first thing we will start with is that the code comments, right? That's where first you want to start. Right now this code has no comments. And I'm sure you already know there's multiple ways you can access GitHub Copilot. One is you can go from here and open the chat window, right? Open chat window here, and you can start chatting and asking this, questions or code. You can put your code there and ask whatever. So that's really not what I'm going to do. You can also do is right click on this here. You say ask Copilot, or you can use shortcut here, Alt plus slash here. That's what I use all the time. So I say okay. So I open here. So you can put this cursor, depends on where you put your cursor. So I'll just put right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Copilot to do some work for me. Hey, can you comment this program? And again, if you're not familiar with how generative AI works, prompts are the key. Prompts means how do you ask questions. And there's a prompt engineering, and there are how do you ask and write prompts. On CSharpCorner, I have written a great big long article on how prompt is broken down into different components. So if you don't know how to write AI prompts, definitely highly recommended check that out, because your answer can be much better by writing more detailed prompts. All right, but this Copilot in the code editor is simple. It only cares about the code, and it knows what your code you are in. So that's the easy part. You can straightforward just ask questions. So I'll say, hey, can you comment this program? So let's see what it does here. I'll show you right now. It's working now. It's probably reading my code. That's what it does first. And what this code is simply, let's look at here, right? So what it does is, as you can see, that it has written in the right side here, showing me the recommendations, how it's. So if you go through that, if you like the code, you can accept it, and if you don't like, you can ask him again. You can even give more details. You can cancel it and say, I want to the detail. Let me show you quickly. Can you document this code with detailed explanation? whatever, explanation, right? So you can do that. It can probably write more details now. So more you give, more you tell him. Like you can even say, so now this is a little bit different. It's writing on top of each line a little bit more. So say, okay, I say accept. So as soon as you accept, you can see that your code is commented here. And again, just because code is commented, it just try Copilot try to do its job, but you can always go back and read it, make sure it's done right. You always want to verify the code written by Copilot or text or anything comments, right? So this didn't comment on this. So because I said program only, now I'm going to say, can you comment author class? So now I'm going to comment that, right? So this is going to add comments to my author class here. So you can see right here. So you get the idea. You can go and, whatever you can ask for, add more things, and that's all. So that's one thing you can think about when it comes to code quality is as commenting the code. Now, second is explain existing code. I missed that. So I'm going to explain, how many of you write code and say, you know what, I'm going to write a documentation on that code. And how boring is that? We know developers, we just like to write our code. We just try to solve the problems. We want to just launch the program and run and test it. We don't have time to write articles and blogs and documents on that. So I'm going to simply say, okay, can you write a detailed blog about this entire application? So let's see what Copilot does, right? Look at that. So here we go. It has quickly written in a blog already. This title is building a file processing application in C#. So I didn't tell Copilot anything. I didn't tell it like what it is. So it already goes, reads my application, try to understand what it is. It's building a file processing application in C#. And there's introduction here. It also explains step by step. There's author class, and then there's main method using a stream reader, split method. So whatever you would usually write, it's all there. So if you want to document your code, this is first to start with. It's like 80% of your work is already done, and maybe 90, right? Sometimes you may say, oh, this is enough for me or for my team. Now you can just go and add a little bit more to it, and that's your documentation. Now, third thing I'm going to cover is talk about error handling. Right now, right now it's fine. Right now, there's a little bit error handling is already added here, but you can expand more on that. So you say, you know what, error is great, but I'm going to do is, can you add a logging functionality to this program and save log errors in a text file name. You can even give detailed instructions what you want your log file to be, where do you want it to be stored. You can even have different types of formats. You can say, I want you to store all these errors in a database. Then you can go way beyond and build the entire application here without just typing this. You don't have to write a single line of code. So let's see what it does, right? And again, just because it's typing the code, it's going to write majority of the code. You still have to test the code for accuracy, performance, make sure it's working right. You have to do tests. Just don't assume that everything is written by this is 100% correct. Still writing, looks like. There you go. So here we go, right? You can compare here. You will see that, okay, so this has added a log error method here, as you can see. Log error method just below the catch statement, catch block here. And then I think at the bottom you will see the log error. So log is a static method. It's added to our class. See, it's also our text file, which is error log, which is stored in ctemp errors. The reason it's adding to ctemp is because I'm already creating another file in ctemp at the top. So now every time an exception comes, it's going to write to our this log file. So how cool is that, right? So far, I have not typed a single line of code here so far. That makes sense. So let's go back to my list here. So our point here is really, guys, is that a Copilot can save you a lot of time and do some of the work you really don't like to do, the boring work like typing and writing comments and all. So update code to the latest feature. Same thing you can do is you can, if you have an old code, right? You have code. I have a lot of old code. I was looking at CSharpCorner, my code I wrote 10 years ago. It's for C Sharp 2.0 or 3.0 or whatever number. Now it's C Sharp 12. You can literally ask your, I'll go and I think this one is latest code, so it will be hard and we don't have time to show you, but I can just go here and say, let me see this. Can you update this below this program, because this whole program is to C Sharp 12, right? I don't know what version it's written. Probably it's in a little older version. So let's see what it does. You can also be specific that can you write, certain functions, certain method, more detail you do, it's going to try to help you write your code, what you want to do anyway. So look at this. So in left side, we were using a statement, right? We are using use statement. That means clearly it's a old version of C Sharp, and it also using this parenthesis. In new C Sharp, we don't need anymore, right? New C Sharp, you just go and call direct. So same thing with the while statement right here, right? Is not. This one is using is not. That's a new feature in C Sharp 12. Things like that. And look at this is also a new feature here. So now out of sudden, we don't use plus anymore in string concatenation, right? That's the old way to write. This is a old way to write when you want to concatenate strings in C Sharp. Now this is the new way to write in C Sharp 12. And boom, guess what? My code is now, even look at the new, when you're creating a new object, author class here, you don't have to specifically call the name, you just call the constructor this way. So now I can say except, and this, my code is now updated to C Sharp 12. How cool is that, right? So I just wrote comments. I just commented my entire code. I just also created a documentation. I just updated also that to C Sharp 12 in literally few minutes. And how cool is that? Next thing is test cases, right? How many of you really love writing test cases? Not too many. I don't. And let's, same thing. We'll go back to our, same thing. I'll just say, hey, Copilot, can you write unit tests for this program? It sometimes takes a little time because it's working, thinking, it's reading your code. But while it's doing that, it's going to come and write the whole unit test. Look at this. So there's class program test, right? Just scroll the whole thing. It's just as you can go through this, out of sudden your whole unit test is created in it. So now, except you can then go back again and read, make sure that all the, whatever you want to do is doing the right thing. You can change that manually now. You can test it. That's up to you. But guess what? Majority of the work is already done for you. And so how cool is that? It's making, I would say, 88% productivity sounds really good, because more you learn about what it can do, how you can use different tricks, and also you can train your Copilot on your existing project. So let's say you have an old legacy project, but you just join, and it happens all the time. When you join a large company, big company, sometimes you join, you will get put into this big large project where sometimes it takes you like days and weeks just to understand the code and reference and what DLL it is, in libraries, all that. So out of sudden, first of all, you can say, hey, can you just explain me this code? It's going to go and read. Larger the code base is, it's going to take a little more time. But eventually, once it's learned, it's going to explain you that code for you. It can write comments for you. It can error handling. You can say, oh, I want to use certain kind of formatting in this code. It can rewrite the whole code for you. Same thing with the performance and security. You can, if you search, there is also, I think there was already session or not coming up. We already had this, but you can also say, can you check my code for performance? Can you check my code for security? If there is a security, something you're doing around security. For example, you may be calling an API, or there may be some kind of, you know, login thing going on for the API, all that. So it's a potential is limitless here, unlimited. You just learn more and start using it. So with that said, let me invite. I think good thing is I saw a session already on code refactoring, but I'm going to cover this anyway. So let me invite Sean here. He's the rockstar developer. He's going to show us code refactoring feature of Copilot. Sean. Hey, Sean.
Hey, can you hear me? How's my
Yeah,
audio?
audio is great. You're looking
Good.
sharp. Look, I like your t-shirt.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
So how do I share my screen here? Present.
Well, yep.
Share
There's
screen.
a right here, present and share screen.
Okay. All right. Should be my desktop. Cool. All right. All right. Thank you. I'm just gonna start here. Yeah. So for me, when it comes to AI, one of my favorite superpowers you get as a developer is saving keystrokes. I'm someone who's been programming for a long time, 17 years of hacking away at a keyboard. I've struggled with carpal tunnel syndrome and other injuries related to software programming. I use a fancy ergonomic keyboard and do everything I can to reduce injury. But AI guided autocomplete and generative programming can save an enormous amount of keystrokes, which has been very pleasant for my wrists. But enough about that. I think there are many practical applications of AI in programming, but one of my favorite uses is for understanding and working on legacy code bases. It's common as developers that we find ourselves working on existing code bases with a lot of history. And these code bases can be hard to understand, especially if there hasn't been a consistent standard enforced throughout the years. But AI tools can be pretty helpful here. If I have to work on a old part of a code base, one of my first things that I do is apply some basic refactoring to the code I'm working in. And I'm talking basic down to earth refactoring that doesn't make sweeping changes to the code base. Because of course, if we're going to do that, make sweeping changes, then we're going to want to plan that with the team to make sure that we can test it properly. I mean, traditionally for refactoring, we use tools like ReSharper or the built-in refactoring in the IDE. But I find that AI tools, especially Copilot, being integrated directly to the IDE, works pretty well as a refactoring tool, turning a sentence of natural language into practical refactoring steps. It's pretty powerful. And of course, there's a big difference of how AI handles refactoring versus traditional refactoring tools. And thus it can get code wrong. Since we know it can get code wrong, we can review those changes it tries to make. And in the process of reviewing those changes, we actually do the work of understanding the code, which is crucial in a legacy code base. So you're understanding the code while you're improving it slightly, which is a nice little combination of things. Let me see if I'm sharing the correct code here. All right, so what we're looking at here is a snippet of code. It's some legacy code from CSharpCorner. And you know, I come into this code and I need to work on this. This isn't bad. This isn't too bad. It takes a couple of minutes to maybe parse through these if statements, and I noticed that there's some repeated code here, like repeated logic. So I think we can just make some improvements to this to make it a little bit easier to work on. So as Mahesh demonstrated, we can use this inline Copilot. So if I select some code and ask Copilot, you can see that when it comes up here, that there's some this pink line on the left side that surrounds the code. This is actually showing what code is in context to your prompt. So when you're asking something in the prompt here, this is in the context of this code here. So first thing I can just say, maybe change this code to use var instead of explicit types. Because I mean, nowadays we want to do that, so that's just like, something basic. All right, then we can see the diff here. We're just going to compare real quick. We're using var, var, var. That's good. That's fine. I'll accept that. This is an error. It's an int. So this one specifically, we have to use the type because we're using that as an out var here. Yeah. All right, so that's fine. The variable names, they don't look great, so I'm just gonna select Ask Copilot. We have capital letters here in the local variables, which isn't, a best practice. Bear with me, I have a lot of stuff running on my PC here, so it might be a little bit slow here and there. So I'm just gonna say, can we simplify this further? Let's use the now we can just try basic natural language prompts like this. It doesn't always have to be very technical. The prompts, it can understand English pretty well. So yeah, just based on its huge amount of code that it has online to reference, it's just gonna, fix this for us. And this is, maybe fine. Maybe this is part of the style guideline for the code base. That this is a an out variable, so maybe it just has a little name there to make that easy to know. But yeah, I like this. It changed the variable names. And we don't have to just keep doing this individual steps, but I'm doing this to demonstrate step by step these refactoring steps that we can make. So I can say, like, I'd like to reduce the number of if-else statements. I'll just say branches. I like branches better. I don't like how the response.redirect to page not found is repeated. We'll see what it does here. All right, now for something like this, we definitely have to do some checking here. So when we make a change like this, this could potentially break existing logic. I mean, I don't know what it's doing here. This is not what I wanted here. So let's try this again. Yeah, part of learning to use Copilot is learning to get the prompts correctly. So let me say, can we simplify this? I'll cheat here. I actually have this prompt already copied, so I'm gonna see. And yeah, see, you have to be careful here that the selected context that we're using is what I want to operate on. I'm not operating on any code besides this section here, because this is where I'm working in. So I'm gonna type this prompt. All right, so this looks a little bit more reasonable. It's applying early returns, which is, in my opinion, a good practice for reducing the amount of branching that we have in the code base. So we have some early returns here. And yeah, at the very end, it's going to do this page not found redirect. So that's kind of what I was looking for. Yeah, it looks like it added some code there at the end. All right, so this is a little bit cleaner. We don't have as many branches to look for. We can kind of just like look at this top to bottom and decide, what's happening, and then by default, it's just going to redirect to a page not found. So if it gets to that point, then it hasn't found any information. I mean, one thing that I can do for this, just to make this even better, is to just break it out to a helper method. So we're not making major sweeping refactoring changes here. So like breaking some code out into a helper method can be a good way to just make some code a little bit cleaner without having to think about it too much. So I'll say create a helper method for this code. Place the early returns with return true. This method should return false by default. And I'm saying it like this because I know that I want to do the check for this helper method before I redirect. So it's actually just inserting the code right here in place, but that's no problem. We can just pop it out here into a separate method. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say if process query string. You know what, let's do if not process query string. That would. All right, and so now that we've broken it out into a separate helper method, now whoever, when a developer comes through here to this method to work on it, they can see this is much easier, saying, okay, we're going to redirect to a page not found whenever this fails. What is this? All right, so now we can look at it, and if we care, we can dig deep into the logic. So yeah, this has been just a couple of steps, practical steps, down to earth. This isn't anything crazy or fancy. It's just something you might have already done, but without me having to do all the in-place editing. It still takes keystrokes to type a prompt, but with practice, you can get the prompts reduced to something that's efficient and doesn't hurt your hand as much as just typing huge amounts of code. Yep, and so hopefully that's helpful. And if there's any questions about using Copilot in Visual Studio, you can ask a question in the comments. Hopefully I.
Okay, that was great, Sean. Thank you. Appreciate it. That was good.
No problem.
Yeah, you can also do a high level commands prompt saying, hey, can you suggest me refactoring this code? And maybe it will cover a lot of those things. You are really giving it very basic instructions like I would do to my daughter, sit here, eat this.
Yeah, I'm giving
So
it
it's up
very
to
specific instructions. Yeah.
Because, so you can,
at least for, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so Copilot can be used however the way you like. You want to tell it to do a certain specific things the way you like, that's fine. You say, can you do it yourself and show me what you can do? Depends on everybody's choice, right?
Yes, for sure. If I didn't know what I wanted, I would ask it higher level questions and have it decide for me. But in this case, this is something I do all the time, so maybe I'm experienced with this type of process, but I know what I want from it, and I'm going to force it to do what I want in this case.
Right. That's good. All right. Thank you so much, Sean. I appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem. It's great to be here.
All right. So you just saw multiple use cases of, let me go back to my screen again, my slides. So we just saw how to explain your code. If you have an existing code, you can use Copilot to explain it. Also, maybe write a blog or article, or even create a documentation for your team in your company, right? Documentation is always a time-consuming process. You can always ask it to write comments within your code, error handling, exception handling. You can update code with the latest features. In unit testing and code refactoring and performance, this always takes time. And I know how many times I have asked team to, hey, create unit test cases, make sure they run before the project is being, even deployed and test, all that. So you can do all that using Copilot and more. This was just about code quality. So that covers my keynote today. We already covered that. So what are some of the challenges? So Copilot is still early stage. It's learning. It's being developed. It's not perfect. So there are certain things you need to always keep in mind. That number one, Copilot it's a trained on public data. So all generative AI works on the data, and they use these big LLMs, right? So Copilot is trained on GitHub code and some Microsoft code and some websites code. So the code it's learning from, if the code is bad, means the data is old or obsolete, and that's the only data it's learning from, that means the code it's going to give you is also maybe bad. So you have to always make sure that the code is accurate, and also it's the way you like it. It's doing exactly what you want it to do. You cannot just automatically assume that. That's your job. So I would say majority of code it can write for you, but you still have to do the final review and rewrite and fix things however you like it. You can also, as I said, if C# language just came out, let's say C# 15 just come out then last week, and you are building a new project on C# 15, there's no way Copilot will have those features right away. It might take it time. So that means any code you will see from Copilot is not code for your project. So you have to be careful with that side. And plus, if you're working on an older project, let's say you have an existing project that was written in .NET 5 and C# 10. I'm just giving an example. You have to make sure that the code generated is also .NET 5 and C# 10, because if you generate code in .NET 8, there may be something, may break something in your existing code. So that's really your decision. If you are leading a team or you are an architect of a project, that's where you have to set up these guidelines, that what specific instructions you want to give it to Copilot so the code is generating is matching your existing project. You can definitely, I highly recommend. So how many developers, I'll ask this to everybody here, how many developers really focus on code security and performance when they write their code? I bet not too many. Some architects and some teams have already security and performance guidelines set up, but not everybody, especially if team is a younger team, new team, they're working on a new project and they are behind these deadlines. They have to release certain features. So what happens is they don't have enough time to just think about security, about performance, about best practices. So that's where Copilot can also help you that. Other concern is that, so when you say ask Copilot to write the secure code, it may not be secure, because remember, it's learning from public data. So if somebody wrote a code publicly, it's available, and Copilot is in that code, it has a bug or flaw, now that will come to your code as well. So that's where you have to make sure that the code you're using, especially for security, is really tested. And I mean, security side, I would probably stay away from Copilot. I would not use Copilot to write some kind of security for me, because that could create a big issue, and then some kind of leak in my code in future. IP is another problem, intellectual property, right? Because Copilot is trained on public data, it may be using some of the data that's you're not supposed to use, because the author of that code has not given permissions to use the code. Also, if you're building this for a company or yourself as a product and you're selling the product, that could also create some problems and challenges in coming time. So those are some of the major things you have to keep in mind when you're using Copilot. With that said, let's take some questions. Again, we are launching a Copilot series on CSharp.tv. It's coming, so it's probably going to have 10 or 12 episodes where we are going to break down each feature in one episode with very detailed. So if you don't know what C Sharp TV is, check it out, CSharp.tv. It's our CSharpCorner's live streaming where experts come and show. We have different shows hosted by different experts. That's where we're also doing live streaming this conference as well. So check it out. Make sure you tell everybody about your friends what we're doing about these conferences. I think Simon already mentioned there's more conference coming up. We have a React conference coming up. We have a leadership conference coming up. We have architecture, software architecture, which is my favorite, by the way, software architecture conference coming up. And there's a lot more. So with that said, Simon, I think I'm done here. And thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for everybody. All the speakers, they're doing an amazing job. I watched some sessions. They're great sessions. I didn't know certain things. So with that, thank you, everybody. And let's take some questions.